resources you work with. What is the common misconception?
How are you preparing your successor, if not your backup?
I have a virtual assistant, but I'm still not doing what I should be doing.
Prioritize.
What are we afraid of?
Well, it's different for everybody. And actually, I think it's a question you have to ask yourself. What are you afraid of? It starts with, how do you want to grow and develop in your career? What do you see yourself doing in a few years? What would you like to do? What would you like to learn? And you ask, if there's one thing that you wish you had more of or less of in your work, what would it be? The best leaders that I've known in my career have very intentionally blocked out time on their calendars to do strategic work, and they honor that time. And I'm not talking like an hour here and there. I'm talking like a whole day at a time.
Delegation for development. What is that?
Quick, efficient, engaging, and this is just one of many tools that they have rolled out for each of these, kind of departments in businesses. And it's completely changing the game. And they're using AI to power a lot of these new tools, pulling away the curtain of the secrets.
Hey, I'm interrupting just for a moment to say that if you're liking what you're seeing and you're getting value out of this, please subscribe to the channel, because the more subscribers we have, the better the tools, the strategies, and the knowledge we can provide to you. So thank you very much. Today we're talking about CEO level productivity hacks, the 3 simple ways that top level CEOs use to free up time to focus on strategic work rather than busy work. What are the crucial misconceptions, and how can we learn from them to get our desired level of success? So the first one, we call it delegation for development. What is that?
Yeah. Well, although I spent a lot of time, about 25 years in the corporate world, I'm now an entrepreneur and CEO of a very small business. And I also own another business with my husband, who's a chef. We own a food and wine event business. We've had that for a few years. And I well understand the challenges of having a very, very, very small team and still needing to figure out how to delegate, needing to figure out how to grow when you have very, very limited resources. And a lot of people are wearing a lot of different hats. So delegating for development, the way that I see that is, whether you have a big team or a small team, first of all, if you are the founder, you are the CEO of your business, what that means is you have to find a way to make time to do the strategic work so you can grow the business over time. Because if you're not doing that, I guarantee nobody else is going to do that for you. You're the one. And if you're spending all of your time doing the tactical kind of work where you're, we sometimes call it putting out fires and solving day-to-day problems and responding to emails and getting on calls with clients, some of that work is
and being busy with being busy.
That's it. It's the difference. What I'm really talking about is the difference between working on the business and working in the business, right? Yep. So the first thing that you have to get comfortable with is letting go of some control and delegating, being intentional about delegating specific kinds of work to specific people on your team to not only to develop them, but one way to think about this, if you're already cringing at the thought of handing over some of your work to some people on your team, think about it this way. Do you have an emergency backup plan? So life happens, right? Things happen sometimes that we are not anticipating. You get in a bad car accident, you have an unexpected injury, you get a really, really awful medical diagnosis, you have a death in the family. Life happens, right? If you don't even have a backup plan, if you have not at least given some of the basics, taught your key people on some of the most important things that you do to keep the business running when you are incapacitated, for days, weeks, even months, that's a good place to start.
Let me ask you this from another angle. So, what are the common misconceptions that business owners have about delegation, and how can they overcome them?
Well, usually,
The first one we just said, you don't have a backup plan. You're not thinking about it.
right,
So,
exactly.
so the misconception is, I'm not going to need it, or
So that's the first one, is you're not superhuman. And eventually, it's not a matter of if, but when, something's going to happen that's going to just knock you off your game or put you in a situation where you just can't work for a while and your business still needs to run. So you need to have a plan for that, even if it's just the absolute bare minimum, but you got to have a plan. But secondly, most of us as business owners, we started the business, right? So we're like the brains behind the operation. We're usually the most knowledgeable, the most experienced. We know exactly the kind of experience we want our clients to have, and letting go of that control and handing over, our baby to somebody else to run feels very uncomfortable for a lot of us. That's normal.
why is that? Why is that? What are we afraid of?
Well, it's different for everybody. And actually, I think it's a question you have to ask yourself. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that it's going to damage your brand if somebody else manages differently? Are you afraid that you're going to lose an important client? I mean, with every business, the situation may be different, but you actually have to ask yourself that question. What am I afraid of? And then you have to really ask, is that a rational fear? Is that really what's probably going to happen? And
Maybe
even if it
underneath,
is,
maybe
yeah,
underneath it all is the fear of losing control.
of course. Absolutely. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, what's the upside? So maybe I start kind of handing over a few tasks that I normally handle myself. And I train people, I show people, I walk them through this. This is how I handle this. Maybe they're going to do it a little bit differently than the way that you would. Maybe it's not going to be perfect.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about people who are already doing that. They have a team that they are delegating, but there's still a common misconception, or there still is the old way of delegating, or that you see that you saw, in all your other businesses you followed and you worked with. What is the common misconception or of delegation
Yeah.
that you saw?
Well, delegation is not just about getting stuff off your plate, and just freeing up your time. This is why we say delegation for development. This is about being intentional and strategic about looking at what are the skills that other people in the business need to have. How are you preparing your successor, if not your backup, in one of those emergency situations? So it's actually thinking about not just what's the stuff I'm going to get off my plate. It's what's a really important skill that I have that nobody else on my team has, and focusing on that. It's developing someone intentionally so you can delegate that to them to grow your business, right?
And is it purpose to delegate every special skill that I have to other people and help them grow and maybe be better than me in what I do?
Well, actually, a great leader's philosophy is that you want to either hire people or upskill people so that they eventually are better than you. And if you are a great leader and you understand this is not about ego, this is about building the best business, the strongest business, outpacing your competitors. It's not just about you, it's about creating something that's collectively bigger than you. And so if you can actually upskill your team to be more effective at some things than you are, that's effective leadership.
So if I sum up this point, I would say the main mistake is to think I should. It's about, like you said, like letting go of tasks and having people doing some of my work. It's not that. It's developing the skills of people that
Yeah.
work with me to do the most important things,
Right.
to do so they can do what I do at the highest level.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's very smart and very good. Can you give an example, a specific example of one of the top level CEOs that you've met that have, used that kind of delegation and effectively delegated tasks to the teams, developed them?
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of both at the CEO level and also working with other executives in the organization. What I saw that executive level leaders did well when it came to delegating, um, it was first giving exposure. And what that means is bringing certain employees along with you so that they can experience kind of a day in the life of what you do. And it can be things, for example, like if you are always the one that meets with the big clients to kind of close the deals, it's bringing someone else with you so they can see how you do that. And you coach them before you have a pre-meeting discussion to kind of prime them and point out, this is the strategy, this is how I'm going to do this. Here's how I'm planning to, kind of pivot, if I get challenged in this way or that way. And then after the meeting, you have a follow-up coaching discussion and you ask questions. What did you notice about what I did? How would you handle it if you were in that situation? So it's giving exposure to those situations that an employee otherwise might not have. And then continuing to do that and then giving them a little bit more chance to experiment, a little bit of time to practice. So instead of you doing all the talking, maybe you get to a point where you're doing half the talking and then your employee now jumps in, is kind of picking up, and now they're stepping up and they're practicing. And so it's an iterative process. It's something.
But is it for specific kind of employees? Is it for my number two, or randomly picking employees of the company and join me on the next business merger call, so you learn how this business operates?
That might be a little more risky. I would probably suggest starting with your number two, or looking at your what we will call your top talent. These are your A players. These are the people that you know that have the potential to grow and to learn and to lead. And you need to know who these people are in your organization. And those are the people that you make a differentiated investment of your time and effort in.
But if I understand, if this meeting is about a sale, then I would invite someone from sales, maybe the top guy of sales. If this meeting is a meeting with employees, for engaging them, I would bring someone that is from human resources, or his role is to maybe in operations, or engage with the other employees, right? I would choose them according to the subject of the meeting.
It depends. It could be done that way, but another way of looking at it is if you want to give people different kinds of career development opportunities. Yep. So somebody might be, for example, you might have someone who is in sales now, but maybe what they really have an interest in is something else. So if you start giving them exposure to another area of the business and a chance to learn that part of the business, practice in that part of the business, you're actually helping them to grow their career. And that is an outstanding strategy for engaging your people, but it's also another way of coaching and delegating certain work. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. It really depends on, what your objectives are, what the needs are in your business.
That's great. Okay. The question is, what are the key qualities for me as a team leader? What should I look for in my team members to ensure that I can successfully delegate to them?
Yeah.
Is there something I'm going to look for in an employee,
yes.
future employee, that says, okay, this is the guy I can bring to expose. This is the guy I can use the exposure method on.
Yeah. That's a great question. And there's two very specific things that you want to be looking for: performance and potential. So performance, meaning you start with people that are consistently high performing, consistently delivering results, consistently going above and beyond. Potential this is where you're looking to see, are people stretching beyond what they need to do for their jobs? Are they unafraid to take some risks? Are they eager to learn new skills? Are they eager to step up and lead? Do they have the potential in 5 to 10 years from now to keep moving up? So these are the two things you want to look for: this stellar performance and potential to do more, potential to grow, potential to step up.
Do these two traits usually go together, and what if I see one of them? I think of one someone in my company that I see a lot of potential, but not that much willingness to go outside the box, to learn new stuff, to expose himself to other fields of interest.
Yep.
Is it something that I can help someone develop, or it's either he has it or he doesn't?
That's a really interesting question. Sometimes people don't have the motivation from within, to stretch themselves or to take on more. And what they need is someone to give them the opportunity and to give them the challenge and to give them a goal and to then encourage and support them. And then they'll kind of bloom or blossom, they sort of find their sweet spot and shine. So you can experiment with that. But I would caution that if you are, if you see a lot of potential in someone and you're giving them opportunity and they're just it's not enough for them, they're not stepping up, then you have to pay attention to, is this investment worth my time and energy? Are there others in the organization that this would be a better investment, of time and effort? Because, for example,
but if someone, do I always have to have someone that wants to grow and expand? What if he's a top performer in what he does, and I can say, okay, I can use this guy or this woman just doing what they do good, keep doing that, and that's it? Or do I have to always look for someone that wants to develop and be better all the time?
Well, you have to ask the individual if they want to grow, if they want to stretch, if they want to move up, if they want to take on more. And you have to listen to what they say, because if they tell you that they don't and you keep pushing them, it's probably not going to be very motivating or very helpful, right? But if you have a conversation and they tell you, yeah, like I have plans for my career development, there are things that I want to do, then okay, then let's make a plan. Let's work on that. Let's give you that exposure. Let's give you the opportunity to stretch. So
Right.
It's not for everybody. And you've got to make smart choices about who you make this kind of investment in.
Share with you. A lot of the time I feel the need to explain people why is it so important for them to grow, why it's so important for them to learn new skill, why it's so important for them to develop like I said, new skills in order to be successful in their own ventures, in their own businesses, in their own plans for the futures, not just in this. But I feel like a lot of times I'm really putting a lot of effort in it and pushing it forward, but it's not coming from them. And you're saying be more aware and more attentive when you hire and when you look for people that have that trait innate with them, in them. It's going to be the journey is going to be a lot easier, and you're going to progress a lot faster. We talked about delegation for development. I love that. Absolutely. And I'm going to watch it again, right? A lot of things for myself. And let's talk about outsourcing time wasters.
Okay. So time wasters are different things for different people, but you know it when you feel it. You know it when you're in the work and you're feeling like, this is such a drain of my energy. This feels like it's just not a really good use of my time, but I have to get this work done. So outsourcing time wasters is thinking strategically about what are the things that I'm doing that I could easily and maybe even inexpensively outsource that are just not a really good use of my time. And a good example that I have of that is, if you're not already doing this, hiring a virtual assistant. And you can go to lots of different platforms to find freelancers that can do this work. And you decide what it is that you need assistance with. It could be a variety of different things. You know, it could be responding to emails, it could be scheduling, it could be lots of different types of work. But paying for a virtual assistant to take, even if it's just 25% of your tactical work off of your plate, could be one of the smartest investments that you make to free up your time for more strategic work.
So let me ask you this. How can business owners identify which tasks or functions are best suited for outsourcing? How can they identify the time wasters?
Yeah.
Is there a tool above feeling that I'm not doing what I like, or how do you know?
Well, if you are able to it could be just something simple like keeping a journal or just keeping track of where are some of the things, kind of repetitive or repeated tasks that you're doing, that you find you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and it's taking a certain chunk of time, let's say, in your schedule. It's noticing where that time is spent, especially when it's repeated tasks. That's usually a pretty good clue of that's an area where you might be able to get help from a virtual assistant. Another thing to be looking for is anything that you're doing that is, we said earlier, the difference between working on the business or working in the business. So when you're working on the business, and that could be things like doing market research, seeing how your competitors are maybe using new strategies that are set to outpace what you're doing. It could be looking at what are the trends in your industry and how are you going to prepare for changes ahead. That's smart strategic work. That's a good use of your time. If you're just doing all this kind of day-to-day, managing operational work, that's the kind of work that is not going to be the best use of your time.
But I want to talk to you about a bigger problem.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
have a virtual assistant,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still not doing what I should be doing. And I've been reminded, now that you talk about it, I'm reminded of a book I read by Dan Martell. I don't remember the name of the book, but he gave this tool where you track what you do during a day. I think every 15 minutes, you look at what you do and you give it a score. I don't remember exactly. I think it's 4. It goes. There's four ways you can look at it. Is it draining my energy, or is it giving me energy? Is it making me money, or is it taking me money? And if it's both making me money and giving me energy, I should be doing it. If it's any other thing, then I should delegate it.
Yep.
What do you think about this?
Well, I love that. And it makes me think of an exercise that I've done so many times in my career. It's usually with a team, with a group, but you can do it for yourself as well. And it's evaluating your work and looking at what should I stop, start, and continue. But sometimes we forget that there are things that we can just say, I'm not going to do that anymore. You just make a choice. This isn't adding value. I'm stopping this work, or it's not adding value for the business. And then you look at, okay, well, what are the things that are working well? So making money for the business, giving me energy, that's continue, right? And maybe prioritize. Then you've got this other area, and that's start. And if you're thinking, I'm already overwhelmed, I'm already so busy, I don't have time to start something else. Well, this is where the delegation and the outsourcing, kind of come together. If you're delegating and for development and you're freeing up time, you've got to think about, well, what do I want to start doing? Because if you don't do that, your schedule is just going to fill up with other stuff that it maybe is not going to be that really important strategic work. So the best leaders that I've known in my career have very intentionally blocked out time on their calendars to do strategic work, and they honor that time. And I'm not talking like an hour here and there. I'm talking like a whole day at a time.
Would you define strategic work as starting things that I should be starting things that I want to start?
Well, strategic work is all about the work that is not focusing on managing today, the day-to-day operations. It's about growing the business for the future. So strategic work is work where you are either researching, evaluating, planning, but it is all based on what the business needs to do next. What the business, how you're going to survive with changes that are coming your way, with understanding what your competitors are doing so you can outpace them. So it's not just writing a business strategy, but it's making the time to execute that business strategy. And you can't do it in a vacuum either. This is something you should be doing with either your, top leaders in your business, or you can do this with other entrepreneurs, other business leaders, even people outside of your field to gain totally different perspectives and totally different ideas. But you have to make the time.
This is so important that we defined it, because I think people need it so much to understand what is strategic work. Okay, I want to do things that's important to the business. So I don't want to just continue doing things that are not important, but what exactly am I going to do when I have all this free time? And you just defined it. And I think that's pulling, that's has a magnetic power to know that, okay, I'm going to do all this important stuff that I now understand what I should do. I think this is very important, and a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't really understand, okay, I'm going to have time for strategic work, but what exactly is that?
Yeah.
The definition you just gave, that's spot on.
Let's dig into that some more. Let's give some more examples. So let's say you've blocked off this Friday in your calendar to do strategic work. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, a good place to start is to ask, do you have a strategic plan? Like, do you even have a business strategy? Is it written down? Okay, you don't have to, if you don't have this, or you have some semblance of this, but it's not really fully clear, maybe there's an opportunity to revisit it, clarify it, but start with something simple, like what are the 3 goals, the 3 things that you want to achieve in your business in the next 3 to 5 years? And this shouldn't just be like, whatever comes to your mind. You got to go do some research. You got to figure out what's happening in my industry, what changes are ahead, what are my competitors doing. You got to talk to people, talk to your employees, get their input, get their ideas, and then get really laser focused on, these are going to be the 3 priorities that we are going to focus on for the next several years. And then work backwards from there. Well, if these are the goals, how do we get there? You got to break it down into manageable, like actionable steps that could be through projects. Okay, we're going to start a new project next month, and I'm going to assemble, these, people on my team to go work this project.
I have to share something that came up as you talk. I don't think we can tackle it today because it's too big of a subject, really, and maybe deep. But when you talk about making that plan and knowing what you want for the future, and having and knowing the exact steps, one of the biggest problems that I always hear from entrepreneurs is, my biggest pain point is that I'm not sure exactly if what I'm doing is right or wrong. I'm not sure if the trajectory is up or down. I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do, that this is the right next to make or not. Yeah. And when I need to make such a plan for 3 or 5 years, there's so many things I can do wrong with this. There's so many mistakes I can do along the way. Now I have to pour them on the paper, like, whoa, so many insecurities, so many, insecure points and unknowns. Yeah. Oh my God, that creates fear. I don't want to do that. I just want to do the next thing, the next little thing that I am pretty certain at. And if I get that wrong, then okay, I can do another thing. But now you ask me to plan all these, steps that I'm not sure of. So how can we reconcile that? How can we overcome this feeling? And really, I hear it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard it before, but I hear it all the time.
Absolutely. A little bit of what you're describing, I think, it sounds a little bit like imposter syndrome, where you don't have that confidence from within, and you're worried that you're going to take the wrong step, and you're going to take the company or the business in the wrong direction.
Okay, we're talking about things that we haven't done before. We want to develop, we want to progress, we want to take it to the next level. We haven't done that, so that's an unknown. Now let's think about 3 years of things that we want to do that we haven't done before. So it's either being an imposter or just, like I said, taking the biggest pain of an entrepreneur, the uncertainty, and now magnifying it.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind that could help with this. The first is...
That's a mindset question, of course.
Yeah, it is. But there's also some real, specific things that you can do to help with that. The first thing that comes to mind is that you might need a risk mitigation strategy. So as you're developing your long-term strategy for the business, it would be prudent for you to also be thinking about and even discussing with your team, what are the potential risks and what's kind of the not backup plan, but let's call it maybe the pivot plan. So if we start going in this direction and it's not working, what are going to be the signs that, the red flags that we need to look for? What are we going to do when that happens? How are we going to pivot? So then you feel like, okay, we're going to experiment with this. We're not sure if it's going to be the right thing, but we know how to look for the signs if we're off track, and we have a plan for what to do. Now you're back in control. Now you're doing this strategically. That's just throwing it at the wall to see if it sticks. You really plan of if it goes well or if it goes not well, you know what you're going to do. So that's one thing you can do. The second thing is you may want to consider bringing in a consultant that knows how to help you to build a smart business strategy. If you don't know how to do this, there are experts who can help. And it doesn't mean that you have to pay a whole bunch of money or this has to last for 6 months. You can find consultants for affordable rates for a period of time that can help in an area where they have expertise and maybe you don't, and they can guide you through this process. And that can be a really worthwhile investment.
Is there an example of successful outsourcing, like a story that you remember from one of the CEOs or one of the top executives that you met? How did he implement that, the outsourcing his time wasters in the right way, like you described?
I would say, actually, the examples that come to mind may not be as relevant for your listeners, because with many of the organizations that I worked in, outsourcing was outsourcing systems and platforms and whole teams in order to implement like a huge change across the enterprise.
Let's try and see if we can suck the juice out of it and the main principles.
All right. So one example that I can think of that was a huge implementation a few years ago was using a platform for what we called talent and performance management. And before we had outsourced this, we were trying to do everything, we say, in-house. So we had our own kind of cobbled together system that we used for basically capturing the data about employees' performance and capturing data about talent management, like planning succession. So who you want to plan to put in certain leadership positions, what experiences do they need, what exposure do they need to be ready. And so we finally realized that our in-house system, if you could even call it that, it was clunky and it was slow and it wasn't giving us what we needed. And so strategically, the company made a big investment in kind of a state-of-the-art system because, the executive said, we want to be known for having the best talent in our industry. We want to engage and retain and keep the best talent in our industry. So we need to have a system that is going to empower us to be able to do that effective. So in this new system, what we outsourced basically getting access to this platform where employees suddenly had access to, best way I can describe it was sort of like pulling away the curtain of the secrets of how jobs were structured in the business, how they were ranked, what kind of skills and capabilities and experience you needed to be ready for another job. It was like a career development portal, and it had all this capability where employees could go into this portal and they could discover and explore jobs in some cases they didn't even know existed. And they could take an interest assessment and see, okay, if these are my interests, what kind of jobs match with this? And then they had access to the job postings to see what jobs are open right now. And then there were tools to learn how to interview effectively. It was all in this one system, like a one-stop shop for employees. It was amazing. And it ended up being a hugely successful platform that the company invested in, outsourced, this sort of expert development to. And not only did it help to drive engagement, but it helped with talent management. We started making smarter, more nimble moves of moving people around in the organization. We had transparency to people's skills and interests. It was all in this platform. It helped the leaders and it helped the employees. So I know it's a really large scale example. Yeah.
My takeaway from this would be ask yourself, what is the most important thing to me in the business? Like you said, what do I want to be known for? That's a really good question. What do I want to be known for? The best what? The company with the best, fill out the rest.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first question. Now the second question is, okay, who does this best?
Yeah.
Obviously not me, but who does this best? And so how can I outsource it to the person or the company or the organization, whatever, that does this best, so I can be I can get to the point that I'm known for this as efficiently, fast, and securely possible.
That's a brilliant explanation. Perfect.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next one.
All right.
Oh, you know what? There's another one. What are some potential pitfalls of outsourcing that you've seen people do wrong? Talked about misconceptions before.
Yeah.
So talk about pitfalls of outsourcing, because you can do outsourcing wrong.
Yes.
Because it's very important to outsource this, but then you make a mistake.
Yes.
And that's why people are not doing it.
One area where I see this happen a lot, especially in large organizations, is the decision whether or not to outsource your IT, your information technology team or department. And I've seen companies go back and forth over the years. We're going to do it in-house. No, we're going to do it, it's cheaper to do it out-house. It really depends on the needs of your business. And fundamentally, I think it's really important to pay attention to what are the tasks, or what is the work in your business that is critical to remain within your business or done by the people in your business. Because if you outsource it, it's not going to have the same level of value or the same quality or alignment with your brand or your values. For example,
But isn't this always the fear of outsourcing?
Yes. So what it
even
means
to this virtual assistant, will she be representing me with the same values, and will she have the same values and be representing me like I represent myself to the employees and to the clients? So how do you know?
Well, you have to decide, how much of a difference you're willing to accept, because it's never going to be a perfect match, right? So if you're like, well, okay, maybe 25% is like, that's not the way I would do things. It's not the way we would do things normally in our business, but that's acceptable. But if you're like, half the time this person or this team that I've outsourced is operating in a way that doesn't align with our core values, like maybe, for example, one of the, things that you're really known for, that you're really proud of in your business, is customer response time, or it's how quickly you get back to your clients, right? And if you start outsourcing a body of work to a person or a team that has a very slow response time,
Yeah.
if that's important to you, then that's like a deal breaker, right? So you have to know what your deal breakers are, and you have to know what things you're not willing to compromise on, and you have to set very clear expectations.
So when I recognize what's the thing again that is important to me, again, that I want to be known for or that I want to be perceived as, is that something that I say, okay, it's worthwhile for me to invest more in improving this capability in-house than outsourcing it? Or does it mean just be very, very careful when outsourcing it? Choose people that you know that will be aligned with your values, and until you find it, don't do it. Is that the lesson?
Yes, and you might want to start the outsourcing relationship with a trial period. Like, let's try this for 60 days, 90 days, and then we have a check-in. We give feedback both ways, and we see, is this working? And you have it even set up that way in the contract, so that if after a certain period of time you don't feel like you're getting what you need, you have an exit strategy. So sometimes you might feel like when you're getting started, okay, we seem to have similar values, a good rapport, but then in actuality, what you're seeing is, okay, this is not what I need. And sometimes it's just, you have to give that feedback, give the person or the team an opportunity to improve or to change. But if you set a time frame for, let's try this at low risk, let's try this for a certain period of time, then you can have an evaluation and see if it's worth continuing.
Let's try to sum it up, and I don't know if we can succeed with what I'm aiming at, but let's try. Outsource when?
Outsource when you either are lacking the expertise about something that you need, so you need to bring in the experts, or outsource the time wasters, the things that are sucking up your time that can be easily outsourced with low risk.
No, that's great. And don't outsource when?
Don't outsource when you have like a secret sauce, special capability that's unique to you or your business that other people, other teams are not going to be able to replicate, and it's going to damage your brand.
You totally got it. You nailed it. Good job. All right. Last hack. Let's talk about smart automation. And as you said, without losing the human connection to your top clients. So what is smart automation versus just automation?
Well, this is an area that I'm still learning myself because there are so many new automation tools available. It's a little overwhelming even sometimes.
But I want to remind you, we're talking about things that we can learn from the top CEOs, the productivity hacks, what they use in the organizations to grow them and to propel their own success and the company's success, and how can we implement them. So let's think about a smart automation, maybe even start with an example of a smart automation that the CEO that you work with or did. What's the takeaway that we can use from that? Or we can start with another question, which is, what type of practical work are most beneficial for a business owner to automate?
Yeah. The way I see it is, I see a lot of opportunity for automating communication. And I see a lot of smart executives using automation when it comes to any kind of communication that is repetitive in nature or doesn't require, let me put it this way, is not sensitive. And sensitive could be like, has confidential information, or it is politically nuanced. You know what I mean? Where
Can you give an example of the non-sensitive communication that could be automated?
A non-sensitive, like a standard communication could be, if, excuse me, if you frequently receive requests about a particular product, a particular service, a particular process, you've got somewhere stored a standard response to that so that you can fire off that communication as often as you need to, and you don't have to keep rewriting it.
Like a chatbot.
Yeah, exactly.
And with AI today, there's no limit to that.
That's it. That's it. So if you start paying attention to where do I find myself repeating myself in my communications, there's probably an opportunity somewhere in there to use some automation. So communications, I see a lot of opportunity. And then the kind of watch out there is when there is a conflict or a challenge, whether it's with a client or it's internally with within your own business. That's where it's time to usually kind of step away from the computer and pick up the phone and have a conversation.
Yeah, because a lot of, I mean, we say, okay, the third hack of CEO level productivity, taking our business to the next level, reaching our desired success is automation. But a lot of people would say, I'm afraid to lose like you said, the human connection, the human touch. There's no replacement to speaking with the person, or I don't want to be misunderstood, or I don't want to have like a conflict with a client or with an employee because it was automated. I want to be, like I said, in control of the situation, being able to respond. So how can we overcome this fear?
Yeah. Well, so I think it starts
or look at it.
Yeah, I think it starts with experimentation. You know, you kind of have to figure out what level of automation you're comfortable with and what works for you and what doesn't. And as we're thinking about that example of, picking up the phone in the case of a conflict or a challenge, another thing that just came to mind for me is I remember a rule of thumb that a great leader that I once worked with used. And this isn't necessarily automation, but I think it's a really good tip. And what he would do is he would notice that if it took more than 3 emails to resolve an issue or to come to a conclusion, he would pick up the phone. And so it was like kind of this hack really of not getting into the situation where it's this long email chain and it's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Stopping at email number 3, if it takes more than 3, having a conversation, and that freed up so much of his time instead of spinning his wheels in email. So it's maybe that's not automation, but I found that to be a really smart tactic.
I think it's this tip can help you also in time identify when subjects that might take more than 3 emails versus those who always get solved within the first 3 emails. And when you identify them, you say, okay, this goes to the phone, to the conversation file, and this goes to the automation file. Whatever doesn't go to the conversation file goes to the automation file.
Yeah.
And I think that can lead us to identifying what do we need to automate. And do you know any good automation tools?
Well, I know that very recently, just a couple of weeks ago, Canva made a huge announcement. It's a long presentation, but they announced a whole suite of new tools in their platform. They are changing the game in their field, in their industry. You should YouTube the Canva announcement if you haven't seen it. And by the way, it's like the coolest corporate presentation I think I've ever seen. Like they just took like traditional corporate culture and just tossed it out the window.
It's also on the connection side, or just the design and creating these sites, whatever.
This is what's so fascinating to me about what Canva is doing. They're really disruptors now because they started off as being known as a platform that was really built in the beginning kind of for graphic designers. And their goal was always to make design tools available for anyone at any skill level. And so they've nailed it on that. But then they saw the opportunity to expand their business. This is a great case study in like business strategy and business expansion. So now they have expanded their platform to offer a suite of different types of tools for various departments, for sales, for marketing, for creative. So they have several areas of, let's say, business capability where they have launched new tools that are specifically designed to help those departments. And I could spend another hour talking about examples, but to give one example, they are in the HR space. I remember they've created a new tool that allows for rapid development of online learning. And there used to be, or there still is, I should say, a lot of old legacy companies that specialize in developing e-learning, and their systems are complicated and they're difficult to learn, and it takes a long time to produce content. And Canva has created something that makes creating learning material quick, efficient, engaging. And this is just one of many tools that they have rolled out for each of these, kind of departments in businesses. And it's completely changing the game. And they're using AI to power a lot of these new tools. And they're using AI to develop automations to simplify work. I remember they had a client from Expedia that came on stage and gave an example of how they were using automation, and it was like a game changer for their business. So I feel like I'm just a walking advertisement now for Canva, but I swear I'm not. There's no affiliate promotion here. I'm not.
Yeah, not here at the moment. Hopefully in the future.
I'm all for any business that is aimed at making the business owners or the entrepreneurs' life easier. Hey, I'm there supporting, and I'm using Canva myself. I'm loving it, and I'm so happy. I'm gonna check it out right after we finish this podcast.
Check out that YouTube video. It's great.
So if I ask you what are the initial steps that I should take to begin automating my tactical work, is go to Canva, see the presentation, and go there, or is it something else?
Well, look for those repeated tasks, and especially repeated communications. That, to me, that's like low hanging fruit. That's an easy opportunity. Or if you are spending time populating spreadsheets with data, I recently discovered this great hack with ChatGPT. I'd heard about it in a YouTube video, and I thought, wow, could this really work? Could it really be this easy? And I tried it, and it does work. So as a small business owner, one of the things that we are responsible for is the very, let's say, undesirable but necessary task of having to file our taxes and having to report our expenses and our earnings. And it tends to be a very tedious task, but necessary, right? And whoever is doing this in your business, whether it's you or somebody else, in ChatGPT, you can now ask ChatGPT to create a spreadsheet for you and tell ChatGPT exactly what columns you want, how you want to define them. And you can upload images of your receipts or your invoices, and it will populate that spreadsheet with the data that you want from your paper invoices. And in about 5 minutes, all of the data is in the spreadsheet ready to go. Blew my mind.
Oh my God. That is a game changer.
Yes. I was really happy to find that.
You're giving me more and more reasons why I'm happy that we're having these conversations as we go along. Let's not stop. So we talked about the 3 hacks already of the top CEOs. We talked about delegation for development rather than just regular delegation and the misconceptions. We talked about outsourcing, time wasters, and how to identify them and how to outsource. We actually talked about outsourcing rules, which I loved. And then we talked about automation rules and how to smart automate and not just automate everything and think about automation and how to use it. And we even specified a really neat tool. Let's talk about a bonus hack.
And this is the secret. This is how you say it. The secret to keeping your best workers, and it's not what you think.
Hey, I'm interrupting just for a moment to say that if you're liking what you're seeing and you're getting value out of this, please subscribe to the channel, because the more subscribers we have, the better the tools, the strategies, and the knowledge we can provide to you. So thank you very much.
So the question is why employee engagement, that term, that that HR term, is crucial to retaining top talent. How can I understand it as a team leader, not an organization yet? And what are some effective strategies to achieve it? Why is it important? Let's start with that. Why is employee engagement important to me? And even if I have a small team, and how should I implement it?
Okay, well, lots of great questions, and I can't wait to dig into this topic. So employee engagement is another one of those buzzwords that I think a lot of people just assume it doesn't really mean anything, or that it just means like, how do you make the workplace more fun? How do you make people more happy, right? And that's not actually what engagement means, or it's not what it's supposed to mean. So engagement is actually something specific and something measurable. And why does it matter? That was your first question. So why should you focus on this? Why should you spend time figuring out how to engage the people in your organization or in your business?
What is engaging people in my business? What does it mean?
So engagement really is all about listening to what actually matters to people. And it's often not what you think. So most people think, or most leaders think, that if you ask employees what they want, they're going to all say more money. I want to be paid more, right? That it's the logical assumption.
Yep.
But the interesting thing is that the research shows that the number one thing that most people want in their work or from their work, although we would all welcome more money, no one's probably going to turn that down.
Sure.
The number one thing that people really want is to be recognized for their efforts, especially in front of others. That is the number one way to actually engage people. And measuring engagement, it can be done in a very scientific way with fancy surveys, and there are experts on this field that could talk all day long about this, but you can do it in a really, really simple, easy way. And that is,
what happens when you engage employees in your business? What happens? You recognize them for their jobs, for the work, for the good work, and you do it in front of others. What happens?
Two things. You see an improvement or a boost in productivity. So this gives people the power and the energy to do more with less. They're more likely to go above and beyond. That's the first thing. And two is people stay. When people are engaged, they stay in an organization. They're not spending time looking around on LinkedIn, on job hunting sites, and looking for other opportunities, because they feel like they're in the right place at the right time doing their best work.
When and where was this concept first tested or first revealed or discovered?
That's a good question, Ido. I don't know if there's sort of like a founding father to this concept.
Or an era where people stopped recognizing the concept of engagement
that
and
I can
the
answer,
positive implications.
Yeah, that it really started in earnest, I would say, about 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
Before, I would say like in the 90s, you weren't hearing a lot of, you weren't hearing a lot of CEOs talk about employee engagement. That wasn't like a thing, but somewhere around the early 2000s, we started to hear more about this term, and the really savvy CEOs started to realize that there was something to this, that by actually measuring the level of engagement in their business and understanding why people weren't engaged and making changes to address the stuff that people really cared about, that actually affected the company's performance, the bottom line performance. When they started to realize there's an intersection there and it matters, then the CEOs all over the world started paying attention to this. And now look at any big corporation in the world. I absolutely guarantee you they are doing an employee evaluation at least once a year. Sometimes they do multiple times a year. And they have a dedicated team of experts that do nothing but measure employee engagement data, interpret the data, and make recommendations on what to do. There's a whole science to it.
Do you think that what sparked it is mainly the hard competition between the companies, and specifically in high tech?
Yes,
that people went from this one to this one. Everybody's after the top talent, LinkedIn. Hey, come work for me, come work for me. And then they say, okay, how do we keep them? We pay them, we pay and pay and pay and pay and pay. Nothing is working, and we don't have the money to pay more.
Yeah,
so
right.
Is there another way?
Yeah, what you're describing, there's a term for this, and it's called the war on talent. And it started with, as these online job-seeking platforms became more prevalent, it became easier for people to see what kinds of different jobs are available and to network and to move around. And so companies did indeed have to figure out how to adapt to this, how to survive, how to keep their best talent. So competition is a huge part of it. And so if you're thinking, well, I don't have the bandwidth or the kind of investment, means to be able to do some huge, large scale employee engagement assessment every year, you don't have to do that. It starts with simply having one-on-one conversations with people. Or if you have a large team, it could be that your leaders are having conversations with their direct reports. And you ask really, really simple questions. You ask, what matters most to you in your job, in your work? What do you care about? You ask about how do you want to grow and develop in your career? What do you see yourself doing in a few years? What would you like to do? What would you like to learn? And you ask, if there's one thing that you wish you had more of or less of in your work, what would it be? Like really simple questions. And then what you do is you look for patterns. You look to see, is there a common theme that people are really, maybe it's that you keep hearing that people are saying, I don't always have clear direction. I'm not really sure what priorities I'm supposed to be focusing on. It feels like the needle's always moving and I'm trying to figure out where we're headed. There could be an opportunity there for you as a leader or your leadership team to get clearer on priorities, to get clear on direction, to pick a direction and stick with it long enough for people to get some traction, right? Or you might be hearing things like, well, as this business is growing and we're getting, more employees, we're kind of losing this sense of, team camaraderie and teamwork. Like, I don't even know all the people in the organization, business anymore. So, there's an opportunity to figure out, how do you bring your team together? How do you help them to get to know each other and interact and build relationships? So the conversations will reveal to you where there's opportunities, and then you make choices about what are you going to do about that.
I love it, man. And my biggest takeaway is, of course, the first point, which states that real engagement is about listening to the employee and like you said, recognizing him for the work that he's doing, and preferably and as much as you can in front of other people.
Yes.
And if you're not doing it, start doing it. And if you're doing it, do it more. Right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a super complicated thing.
Yeah, it's easy.
It can be sometimes just mentioning on a team call, like a shout out for somebody that went above and beyond. You can start simple like that.
I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. When I plan my meetings, I'm going to, number one thing, this is how I'm going to start the meeting.
Excellent.
And I'm going to start the meeting with that and measure and tell you what happened. Sarah, we have so much more to talk about, and I have to say I'm gonna have to bring you in again because I have like this much more questions,
That's
and
great.
the further along we go, I have more and more ideas. So we're gonna have to do it again, if you agree, of course. Don't
Of
want to
course, I
twist
would
your
love
arm.
to. My pleasure.
And so two last questions. One to wrap up. So I'm going to ask you how can anyone that listens to this can find out about more about your work and get in touch with you, or for consultant or whatever.
Sure. Well, really quickly and easily, my business is called Evolve, and my website is evolveprogram.org.
Which I
And
love.
thank you. I really specialize in two things. One is I help people, individuals who either want to make a fresh start or want to make a change in their life, to reinvent themselves, reinvent their identity with an action plan to really evolve into a new person and elevate their life or elevate their business if they're a business owner. It's really about gaining clarity of direction and purpose and being intentional about showing up as the kind of person you really want to be. That's one thing that I do. The other thing that I do is I offer business consulting for business owners, specifically in the area of organization development. So my background is in organization development and talent management, in case you need to pick up on that in our discussions today. And so I help business owners to develop their business strategy. I help them with their talent management plan. I help them with pivoting or growing or breaking through barriers, and diagnosing organizational problems at the root cause, not just addressing the symptoms on the surface. I help with finding that root cause and really eradicating those problems that are holding you back from growth. So check out the website, evolveprogram.org. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. And this is the work I'm most passionate about. So I love, love, love working with business owners and helping them to take things to the next level.
Amazing. What I love about you and your work is the fact that on the one side you have so much experience with huge organizations and with hundreds of thousands, 100,000, I don't know, tens of thousands of employees all over the world,
Yes.
and the corporate thing, and you have so much understanding of that dynamic. And you're a business owner, you're a small business owner and an entrepreneur, two businesses, and you have experience in establishing businesses in various places in the world. So you also know the pains of starting fresh, and
Yes.
you have the unique ability, I think, to combine them both really in an original way, in a very natural way. This is why it was so important for me to have you here and to have that conversation with you, because there's not a lot of people who can do that. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people who are consultants for organizations, and they know that, but you also have the experience and expertise and deep understanding of the entrepreneur and the business owner, which is amazing. And I think we sense that during this whole conversation, and we have a lot of practical tools, which is very, very important. The last question is, this podcast is called Reaching the Tipping Point of Personal Success. I know it's pretty vague, but I want you to try to dig and think, what does reaching the tipping point of personal success mean to you?
For me, it means the transition from being a day-to-day operational manager and becoming a strategic leader. And there's a really clear difference in my mind. Instead of running around and putting out fires all day, you have this sort of peace and tranquility and clarity of mind, because you see the big picture, you know what the plan is, you have that confidence that your business is heading in the right direction, and you know that you've got the right people, the best people that you've grown and built up to manage the things that need to get done day to day. So you are operating in a headspace where you have that calm that calm demeanor and calm mind where you are spending your time working on the business, not in the business.
That's a perfect answer. Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
I appreciate your knowledge. It was
so
absolutely
much.
great.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. This was a great conversation.
All right.
Sure.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
Yay. I'm glad that you're happy with it.
Woo!